who don't know us yet, EnerKnol is an energy policy information company. We're based in the NYEW Incubator. You can actually come test out some of our products. We have research and software products that offer solutions to energy policy research data for all sectors in the energy industry. Our team here is headed up by Janet Lynn, our head of product. You can come talk to Janet at any time. We launched New York Energy Week last year to stimulate collaboration and investment in the traditionally fragmented and siloed energy industry. Last year, we had nearly 2,000 participants in our inaugural year of New York Energy Week, with energy professionals from every single sector of the energy industry. We see New York Energy Week as a platform for all the stakeholders in our industry to come together and have the conversations and make the connections that are necessary to drive forward innovation in our industry. New York Energy Week would not be possible without the collaboration of many leaders, many of whom are in this room today. I would like to first thank NYSERDA, our founding partner and sponsor. This year's terawatt level sponsors, Edison, who is very represented in this room today and on the panel, and Brightling Energy, our brand partner, the Energy Agency, and our board of directors, many of whom I see here today, Carolyn Casson, right there. I saw Kristen Barbados somewhere. There's Kristen. So thank you to our board. I would also like to thank our steering committee. I see many of you here today, but in particular for this event, I'd like to thank our chairs, Sarah Racasano and Conan Mira. I'd like to thank Deirdre Miller, who was instrumental in getting the relationship with Shearman and Sterling this morning. So Deirdre, I don't know where you are. Oh, there you are. Hi, Deirdre. And finally, thank you to our hosts, Shearman and Sterling. This is a beautiful space. We enjoyed your Hall of History that we all enjoyed walking on our way into this beautiful room. In particular, I'd like to thank Corinne, Maggie, and Gina Love, who are all in making this event happen. And last but not least, it is my pleasure to introduce Tricia Hammes, the partner from Shearman and Sterling, who will provide welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Emily. I'm a partner here at Shearman and Sterling in the Project Development and Finance Group and a co-head of the firm's Global Sustainable Development Group. We're very excited to be hosting this event today. We think this is the energy industry is a great area for women's involvement, given kind of the cutting edge diversity that goes on in the industry. We want to extend a special welcome to all of you for attending, and including the creator of the event, EnerKnol, and our distinguished panel members. We're delighted to be hosting this event. Shearman and Sterling has a long and notable history in the energy sector around the globe. In the US, we've been involved across a wide variety of transactions, including restructurings of notable energy industry leaders like NRG, Allegheny, AES, Dynegy, and others. We were involved in the, one could laugh at this, but in the original leverage finance buyout of TXU, now known as EFH, and are currently involved in the restructuring of that company in bankruptcy. We've been involved across the renewable energy sector, including in one of the largest photovoltaic solar projects here in the United States, one of the largest solar joint ventures for a solar tower for Bright Source Energy, and the financing of one of the first transmission lines in the 1705 truck program for DOE. We also have been very active around the globe in the energy sector, including in pioneering structures for the development of power projects in wide-ranging jurisdictions such as Mongolia, Myanmar, across Africa, the Middle East, and in Latin America, where we have a long history, as you may have noticed as you walk through the halls. For me, I think that the power sector has really been a great place to spend my career as a woman. I've had a lot of support from a wide variety of people in the industry, both clients and other lawyers. Shearman has been very focused on the area, and we have a power and energy group as well as a sustainable development group. We've started a Twitter feed on green energy at Shearman Green, which we'd love all of you to join in and follow. We also, as a firm, are very involved in supporting women and their career development. We have a great also Twitter feed at Shearman Women, which is devoted to women's issues, and we hope that you all try to follow that. I think, though, as I said, that we're very excited about this. We're very excited to hear from these very distinguished panelists about their careers, and hope it will provide all of you with some great insights on how to further your careers in the energy sector, as well as kind of what people see going on. And I think this is a really exciting time in the U.S. for energy, as we see further developments and we watch the development of how the interaction between the development of renewable energy technologies, energy efficiency technologies, and of course the interplay with what's going on in the natural gas industry. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panel and let them get to the really interesting stuff. And thanks again for coming, and we hope you really enjoy it and find this valuable.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm also the moderator for this morning, and we'd like to thank all of our panelists for being here. We're very excited. This last year was one of, I think, our team's favorite events for New York Energy Week. And we're even more excited for this year to have these esteemed panelists with us here today. So thank you very much for joining us. Before we introduce the panelists, we'll kind of hear a little bit about their backgrounds, and you all have their bios in front of you too. So hopefully you've been checking out all that they've accomplished. I wanted to provide a little bit of context from last year's Women in Energy Breakfast, which Dr. Cheryl Martin was a speaker at last year. And last year, if anyone was there, you remember that Cheryl kind of inspired the whole group when we asked, what can women do to help other women in the energy industry, a traditionally male-dominated industry? And Cheryl told everyone about what she calls the Rolodex bias, which is really knowing, at panels and at events, we tend to see a lot of men and don't see many women, especially in the energy industry. It's not uncommon to see an entire panel of older, white-haired men. And so that's something that we, that's something that we at EnerKnol, who are actually a company with a lot of women, Angelique, our founder and CEO, sitting right there, that was something that we really took to heart and took as advice. That was something that we thought we could do with New York Energy Week, is really take Cheryl's advice and implement it throughout the week. So this week, I don't know if anyone has noticed, but we did not have any panel that did not have a woman speaking or moderating or in a very visible, high-profile role. We definitely took that into heart with every single panel that we did. And so thanks to all of you for being on those panels. Many of you here were speakers this week, so thank you very much. And with that, I think we want to jump into this. So we're going to ask a few questions up here, and then we really are going to open it up to the audience. So keep in mind what questions you have for these women, and we want this to be a very candid discussion that involves a lot of the audience. So to kick things off, I'll go from right to left. Kathy Boden, who is Vice President at Edison. And then we have Dr. Cheryl Martin, who is the Acting Director at ARPA-E, the Department of Energy. And Sue Fleck, who is the Vice President of Gas Pipeline Safety and Compliance at National Grid. And to start off, we're going to hear from each of them. They're going to tell you a little bit about their backgrounds within the context of turning points. So that's kind of the theme that we were talking about earlier. What turning points in their careers existed that kind of led to where they are today and in the positions that they are in today. So Kathy, would you like to start off?
Sure. Well, thanks for having us, and great to see all of you out there. As far as turning points go, I think, they're everywhere, right? There's so many challenges in our careers, in our lives. One that I can go back to that was a real turning point for me was actually back in college. And I had been going to a state school and getting sort of a liberal arts education, which is really enriching and broadening. But I realized that I wanted to have a very secure career, and I wanted to be able to, support myself financially. So about 2 years into my liberal arts degree, I decided I better go get an engineering degree. Because an engineering degree will get me through a door and into a place where I can have some stability. So that was really a turning point decision for me. I actually left my lovely liberal arts college education that I loved and had a great time doing. I was away from home, and I wound up coming home and commuting and going to Polytechnic University and getting an electrical engineering degree, and that's now NYU, so who knew I would have graduated from NYU? I'm really excited about that.
I kind of feel like I take a new job every 2 years, so I pivot a lot, probably to the point it's dizzying. But I think a couple of things. I came out with my PhD in chemistry into the chemical industry, and I was in chemistry and marketing. And I think the point that I make about pivots is I was approached one day when I was doing marketing. I adored my marketing job, I was traveling the world, to take on investor relations, because we had just bought a big company and they needed to explain the technology. Our guy just quit, and I was like, I don't know anything about that. And it was one of those, well, they're like, you know about technology, you know lots of people in the company, you've worked for us and never let us down before. So for the senior executives in my company, that was the defining criteria. They're like, yeah, you had that accounting course, you'll be fine, so go for it. And so I did, and so I was imminently not qualified to take on investor relations. And I learned that over the next 3 years when I went through 2 economic downturns. The stock went to the 52-week high and low. We had 9/11, we had Enron, we had all kinds of pension accounting. And so I knew all the FASB regulations and things. And so I learned it all on the job. But it was because I had worked for all those people in prior jobs, and that everyone's career was moving at the same time, and we forget that. And so they trusted me. And that, at some point in time, you take these big old leaps, knowing that people have confidence in you. And so I've done that a couple other times, but that was probably the biggest one. And I have to admit that shift over into the executive ranks of business really did change the trajectory of my career.
Hi, I have kind of a different perspective. I'm an engineer, and I had been a very successful engineer for a couple of different companies, but I felt like my career was going to top out there, that I wasn't going to be able to make the jump from engineer into some kind of managerial role. So taking a look at my organization, I worked for a company called Boston Gas at the time, which is now part of National Grid, but it was a smaller company, more of a family-friendly kind of business. And just kind of looking around at who was getting ahead and who was running the business, I realized that the way for me to kind of move my career forward was to take up golf. It sounds odd, but one day it just kind of dawned on me that every vice president, every director, all the movers and shakers in the company were in the golf league. And every Tuesday they would leave at 2:30, they would go to the local golf course, play 9 holes, have a beer and a hot dog after, and stuff got done. So I bought clubs and took lessons and joined the league, and they all of a sudden realized that I existed, I had value, I was pretty smart, and maybe I had an opportunity to kind of bring some value to the organization. The next thing you know, I was promoted and given a pretty significant role in the company. And I do have to kind of take it back to learning how to play golf, but it's not that so much as it was really understanding the culture at the company and realizing that to get seen and get exposure, I had to do something a little different. It's not good enough sometimes to just be a great engineer or a great accountant or be really fantastic at some of those things. You also need to be able to inject yourself into the culture and to be seen, heard, and accepted for who you are, so buy some clubs. It's something that can help you move along in the organization, or whatever works within your needs.
Having lessons in the hallway afterwards.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people all of a sudden want to help you. And it's okay to be really crappy at it too, because then they want to help you even more, just a little advice.
So we were just talking when we were preparing about a recent report that Ernst & Young just put out, a Women in Power Utilities Index. It was actually just released this week. And we were speaking, the report, basically the findings were that the utilities that have more diversity at the top on the board actually have much better financial performance than the utilities that lack diversity. And that's not just gender diversity, it's diversity of all kinds. But the report was specifically about women. And I think one stat that was particularly interesting was that the most diverse companies had an average return on investment of 7.7%, while the least diverse had 4.5%. So there's quite a significant difference with the diversity obviously playing a key role. And so we were speaking about some of the women that you have on your boards. And I'd also like to point out that National Grid and Con Edison were both in the top 20. We can put the link up, yeah. They were, I think, right in there, close to each other. Maybe National Grid slightly ahead. But so we just kind of wanted to hear from these leaders about what you think women, why is that? Why do you think that diversity, especially women on board, leads to better financial performance for a company, especially a power utilities company? And how have you seen that in your companies and any of your career experience?
Well, I just think, utility industry and the utilities themselves tend to become a little insular. Right? We have a lot of specs, we have a lot of things we have to comply to, we think we're doing it right, and we tend to get insular, right? Without the diversity of thought that you bring with different people, women, people of color, without that, different walks of life, you stay insular and you get behind really quick, right? So when you bring in the diversity of thought and you keep an open mind and you make sure that you're constantly bouncing things off each other and constantly getting the input of all the diversity and act on it, you make a better company and you make a much better decision. I've seen that over the years at Con Ed for sure.
I'll add one other perspective to that. I think having women in decision-making positions in the boards and also in key leadership positions within the company is important because think about your customer base. Your customer base is not all middle-aged men. It's a broad and diverse, especially for a utility company. It's everybody. It's from the single mom at home with a couple of kids to the very wealthy family living in a beautiful suburban community. So having the combination of different viewpoints in those decision-making positions helps us reflect our customer base better, helps us make decisions better, and bring more information in. So from that perspective, you need to have diversity in the decision-making process to really reflect that customer base.
Yeah, I just add, I think there's a great quote when I was at Clement Perkins, one of the original founders, and Perkins says that it's hard to see the picture when you're inside the frame, and I think that diversity brings a lot of different frames of reference, and so you get a much richer picture of what's going on. I think to the point you both made, it is really, really true, and we forget because you're in a frame. Every one of us has our perspective, which is valuable, but you have to be careful you don't get too many of the same snapshot.
And Sue was sharing a anecdote earlier about a woman on the board at National Grid who you called the fly in the room, who was kind of always questioning the decisions and just kind of challenging people, and I think that's a lot of what was included in this article. And I think we kind of wanted to, in that same way of like how can we get more women in the boardroom? Do you have any perspectives you want to share through of what needs to be done within your organizations to make sure that women, that there is a pipeline of women who are ready to ascend to that level? And what progress have you seen?
That's a really good question. Thank you for that one. I think what helps us, and I can only speak for National Grid, I've been there for almost 30 years. I think what helps us prepare women for those more decisive and strategic roles within the company, I think is having strong mentors that are also women. And I know that sounds a little trite and cliche, but you can't beat that mentoring relationship to help bring women into opportunities where they can get a broader picture, be more in a strategic position where they can actually try out their ability to influence others and to motivate a team to achieve greater performance. So I think being very careful about selecting mentors that can help women progress in their development and get these great opportunities can really empower an organization to achieve greatness. You don't know how many really talented and amazing people are out there until you give them a chance to succeed, and I think those kind of setups can really be very successful, and have been at National Grid. It helped me in my career, and has helped some others as well.
I think that having the opportunity is really important. We can get it a lot of different ways. I often encourage people early in their careers, I think there's two things, is to get out there and figure out where you can get experience. And sometimes doing things, nonprofits, events like New York Energy Week, where you can contribute and do strategic planning and different things that you're not going to get to do that at the top of a company when you've had no experience. But a lot of boards and activities, you can get experience, get mentors in other fields and disciplines, and find out if you like it. That's another thing. People aspire to things and they just aspire to it. They haven't tested, do I really want to go that way? Individual contributor, it's a team thing, where you're getting your experience. The other thing is, I think, a big difference between mentors and sponsors. I think they can be very different, and you need both. Mentors, I always view generally as knowledge builders, sharers, experience. Sponsors are the people who, when we're all sitting around the table making a decision about who gets the job, they're willing to speak up for you. And the more sponsors you have, it's like having how many cards in the deck have you counted, right? And oftentimes it'll be that the people speak up, not that they don't say anything bad. If they sit back, you lose. And so you need to have people who are going to be for you, and they can be different people. And I think having a lot of working for and around a lot of people early in your career is important as well, because you don't know who's going to succeed and who's going to be in those decision-making roles. And, to my experience, they stand up for you later.
And I think from just to turn it a little bit from a different perspective from you and what you can do, or what we've done, I think, in careers, it is great to have all that support. It's absolutely necessary, and they can be formal mentors or informal mentors. From our perspective, from an individual's perspective, I think just showing up. We talk about getting out there, learning things, trying things. All of that is really important. But when you're given the opportunity, just showing up is the first step. Because I think, I know there's a lot of really fearless women out here. I know that. But there's also a lot of internal fear that we kind of hang on to, and maybe insecurity in some ways. And especially when you're faced with, a whole bunch of really smart folks that are sitting in the room that have a lot more experience than you, and now you're walking in with this great opportunity and feeling you may not be successful. So I think number one is show up, and number two is just be yourself, right? And what'll happen is your credibility will show through. If you've been working hard and getting that experience and going to different places to learn, that's going to show through. So have a voice when you get there. So show up and have a voice, and I think that is a critical measure of success for anyone who wants to rise up.
Yeah. Well, and sit at the table. I think kind of to your point about how do you get noticed, it drives me nuts when I go to a room and around the table, the seats are empty because everybody's sitting, especially the women, around the edge of the room. I was like, if you want a voice, sit at the table. Just sit there. And we don't. And it's very simple. It's a very visual piece of this. And the conversation takes place around the table, so be there.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, that showing up and being at the table, we had put this on there as a discussion question, but I don't know if any of you have read Lean In, or if anyone here read Lean In, but I know there's a lot of supporters and people who, aren't as supportive of it, but I think one of the big messages in that book was showing up, sitting at the table, and making sure you're kind of in the front row and joining the conversation. And one point that is made in that book is that women have a tendency to not really promote themselves. They have that internal fear of something holding themselves back. And I think not really from, talking about your guys, but you all supervise a lot of young men and young women. Do you see a difference in how young women and young men promote themselves and kind of ask for promotions and ask for more work? Have you seen any differences?
So I just interviewed a couple of people for a job, and younger folks and up-and-comers, all really engaged, all really wanting the job. And what I noticed there were 2 women and 1 man, and the man kind of came in, really great guy, very confident. I can do this, this is great. No, I have no experience in this part of it, but I can do it. I have no fear at all, this is gonna happen. Both of the women who did not have experience with it, kind of said, I've never really done it before. I think I can do it. I have a proven track record, but if you give me the opportunity, I will do my best. Right, so it's just a different way. I noticed the difference, the approach, and I'm sure you can't generalize it to the whole population, but with these 3 candidates, the women were a little bit more, had a little more humility around their success in the job, and the man was a little bit more almost overconfident.
I've had similar experience with men and women, although I have to say it is getting better. There's more. 20 years ago, the difference between a man and a woman in an interview, like Kathy's talking about right now, was drastic. Now it's more subtle. But I think that it's all about confidence. Men tend to come, if they're bidding on a job, if they're trying to get that promotion, they're confident that they want it and they can do it. So they come into that interview ready to go and ready to convince you that they're the right person for the job. And women are more, they tend to be more, I think I can do it, I'm pretty sure I can do it. You see those modifiers in there, rather than, of course I can do it. I can do this, I've been successful in every other job I've ever taken. Why would I not be successful here? They don't come in with that. But it is getting better, I have to say. The gap is closing. You guys are doing a fantastic job of kind of bringing your confidence to the table, but you have to quit putting those modifiers in there. Don't say you think you can. You put in for this job, that means you can do it. So, go in there and sell yourself. Sell yourself a little bit better, and once you get that opportunity, you will be successful.
Yeah, and I think framing why you can do something is important. I think the whole idea of what are the skill blocks that you have, right? The fact that you haven't done this job before, of course, right? If you're progressing, you've never done that job before. The CEO was never the CEO until they became CEO. But what are the skill blocks? And if someone comes in and tells me, how are they going to use their skills to solve my problem, I will hire them. I don't really want to hear about what you can't do. Tell me what you can do, and that job description may or may not be exactly what I need. I probably used some HR, click the box to say what skill sets I need, and do I really need them all? I don't know. So never let a job description get in the way of why you can use your skill set and your stretch to succeed. And I think framing it like that sounds much more proactive versus hesitant about success.
And I think one thing, a lot of what we've been talking about with, getting younger women and filling the pipeline with women who are going to rise to the top of the energy industry. Cheryl, you kind of gave us our marching orders last year, but this year, and if you want to share with everyone, what do you think, maybe 1 or 2 things that women can do to help other women to ensure that we succeed? And, maybe it's the Rolodex bias, maybe it's something else, but let us know what we should come to New York Energy Week next year having done.
Well, let's see. I still think that being more aware of and supportive of each other's skills, right? Because I think there are so many places where people need to suggest and stand up, for why women are gonna, be the people should think about for roles, right? I get calls all the time, right? I need women for a panel, or do you know somebody to go on this news broadcast, or who can I interview for this? And it's not hard for me to think of amazingly awesome men and women who could, do that. And am I really very proactively out there trying to find out who's qualified and push that, right? Because if we're not out there continuing to suggest streams of people, really qualified women, the same woman will get asked all the time, and she doesn't have time to do everything because she'll fail at her day job, right? And so there's 150 people in here who could, all be out there. And so I just think more of being aware of what are the skills that somebody has and why would they be awesome to do that. It goes a long way. The ripple effect of that is huge, right?
Sue, any
Yeah.
excitements?
I think that a similar kind of thing. It's all about networking. Make sure that there are women in your network and that you are promoting them and they are promoting you. People talk about the old boys network. There's no reason why there can't be an old girls network. There's absolutely no reason. Every time someone asks you who should be on this team or who should be leading this effort, just name a woman. Name somebody that you know, even if you don't know them that well. Give the opportunities to the other women within your organization, and then just step back and watch them take advantage of those opportunities. Just think how valuable it would be for you if someone had done that for you along the way. So network with other women, get to know them, get to know their skill sets, and then promote them as much as you can so that they can get those opportunities and they'll do the same for you. I think there's a real opportunity there. I agree 100% with what was said there.
Just to add in, I think, when you look at the folks who have gone on and networked and done that well, networking used to be something you did in your company. I've been in my company for 24 years. You talked about being in your company for 30. I look at some of the folks that you had on last year's panel, Kristen standing here, Jill Anderson. I mean, these are folks who really have had the courage to kind of switch it up, right? Not stay in the one company forever and network there, but really kind of branch out and be, I think, what will be the utility of the future or the business of the future. Things are changing rapidly. And without the connections, both internally and externally, you're not going to be as successful as you used to be. So
Yeah, I also think, to your point about the connections, because the world is changing rapidly. Maybe not as rapidly as we'd like in some of these spaces, but it is becoming more interconnected and being able to take the chance to take roles that are very different, right? I've jumped from the private sector to venture to government and gone back and forth. And so I have a perspective about why others may think certain things, and I think it enables me to pick people and put people in teams better because I realize why there's going to be value. And so I think for any of you who are thinking about what could I do next, go talk to some people who made these different transitions. Because in energy, I don't think there's any limits, but getting the opportunity to get out there and get some of these different perspectives would be really valuable.
And I think what you guys have been saying, and kind of what's been a theme throughout this whole week of New York Energy Week, starting with the opening ceremony, is how quickly the utility industry is now changing, and especially in New York State with REV, which has been a theme through the whole week. And I think it was Gil Quinones from NYEW who mentioned that in the next 5 years, we're going to be shaping the policy and the technology that will define the next 50 years of the power industry. And so I think as kind of a final question for our panelists before we open it up to Q&A, what do you guys, what advice would you give to a young person, whether a young man or a young woman, entering the industry right now? And what advice would you have given yourself when you were entering the energy industry?
So if you're looking for work-life balance and you want it to be even and you want an 8-hour day job and you're thinking about coming into the utility industry, run the other way. That is not what it's about. And I remember when I was making career decisions back in college and thinking, do I want to get a law degree? I had some friends who were going for law degrees, so, oh God, they work like 80 hours a week, that's crazy. So you walk into a utility and you work about 80 hours a week, and it's 24/7. Energy is energy. Energy is 24/7, everywhere you go. So, if you're not up for that, go somewhere else.
So I only came into energy 3 years ago, right? So I think if you're not in yet, you can jump right in and make a difference in this space, because I think it is so dynamic, right? And I think that, from the utilities themselves are adjusting to a lot of different business models, the regulatory framework's changing. On the technology side, we're really excited at ARPA-E about what is happening, and I think that the dynamism that's currently being enabled by technology of what the grid could be, right? From actual hardware, software to potentially control storage solutions, right? We just announced this morning $30 million more in funding for fuel cell technologies that might allow us to actually have much more distributed generation, potentially fuel cells as storage. And so there's a lot of technology forming, and so I think as you think about what are your career options, I said it before, they are limitless. They might be very demanding time-wise. I think it is a 24/7 industry that people depend on and take for granted. But it's awesome, and I think it's a great chance to jump in and really make a difference.
Agree with everything my colleagues say, and I'll add one other thing. If I could talk to my 20-year-old self, I'd say don't focus on your job, just your job, and understand it, but understand the industry. Read everything you can about the energy industry. Connect the dots and see different pathways for your future. I came into the business as a civil engineer, and I sat in a cube for the first couple of years, and I just did my design work, and I didn't really think about the business and how it works and how it interacts and the customers and all that kind of thing. And I think once I did open myself up to that and start understanding the drivers for the business and what was going on, then all of a sudden my job made sense and it was more interesting. And I think if you can do that, just be ravenous about reading about what's going on in the industry and understanding all that, and it will definitely help you connect more, see where you can add value, and move your career forward.
Thank you. Well, I think with that, we're ready to open it up to Q&A. There are 2 microphones, I believe. Yeah?
Yeah, I want to know about your work-life balance. Do you have a stay-at-home husband? How did you raise your children?
All right, so balance, let's see. I do not have children. I've been married for over 20 years. My husband is a saint to put up with me. And, I think work-life balance is not necessarily time here and time away, but the ability to kind of detach and be where you are when you're there. And I know that even when I go on vacation, I really can't relax until I read my email. Right? So I need to just kind of get through the email, make sure that things are okay, not hours and hours, but just a little cursory look. And then I'm good to go for the day. So I think, that attachment, some people would think is kind of a sickness. But I think when you rise in responsibility, that kind of puts your mind at ease to know that, the folks that are back home are doing the right thing and everything's going smoothly.
I think balance implies that there's a right place. I think it is a constant stream of transition, right? And you go from early in your career where your responsibilities might be just your student loans and having a job to pay for those, to the demands of children, to potentially the demands of your parents. And I think that you need to understand for yourself, how are those things enabling and constraining you, and acknowledge them for what they are. I have made career decisions where I was traveling globally, lots and lots of time on the road, and I made a decision to be back for a while because of some very personal issues that were happening in my family. But you can accommodate these things, but you have to be willing to talk about them with the people that you work with and for. And I think it is becoming, for both men and women, a better conversation, because we're not framing it as hard lines. I do agree, it's easy to stay attached, and you have to figure out for yourself when you get relaxed and not, and do those things. But I think it's a constant flux, and And I think acknowledging it for that and having the right support people around you through your career is what it really takes. And it's, and appreciating that for people who are making a different decision at every point, it will change for them, it's dynamic. So not saying that any one person, oh, that woman is out on maternity leave, she'll never be back, or that man's been out taking care of his dad, and I think that recognizing that what people are open to for opportunity changes in their career, and always asking, what are people open for? And being willing to speak up as your situation ebbs and flows.
I have to agree, work-life balance is an intensely personal thing for each and every one of us, and whether you have kids or dogs or aging parents or you just like to, have some alone time, you have to figure out that for yourself. And I think for me, having been, in the business for a very long time, the technology, just leverage your technology. I could be sitting in the nursing home with my dad and on a conference call and, managing something that's very important at work and very important for me personally and make it work. You couldn't do that 25 years ago when you just had a desk phone and paper. You literally couldn't do it. It was a bigger struggle. I think work-life balance now is something that you can all achieve, but good points. You need to talk to your colleagues and your friends and your boss and let people know what those things are that are coming into your life right now, how you're going to manage them, not if you can. Don't ask permission, kind of tell them what you're doing and make it work. Because you are a human being and you do have to worry about your life, both sides of it, professionally and personally.
Yeah,
But it's doable.
It is doable. One thing too, certainly when you have other people in your family, their demands for you are much more visible and kind of accepted in the conversation. But I got a note the other day from a woman that I hadn't seen in 8 years, and she sent me this note to say, you said something really important at a meeting like this, that as a young person coming up, the fact that you don't have children at that time doesn't mean that you should be always the one to work 24/7. And the idea that respect for people's time and decisions includes the fact that you have made a decision to not be married with children at that particular point in time is also to be respected. And that there's a lot of pieces about that's still valuable. And our expectations and biases around that. So I think for this audience too, time for yourself, however that happens to be, needs to be out there, and you shouldn't burden people.
And I have managed over my career thousands of people, seriously, thousands of people, and I have yet to have a situation where we could not accommodate somebody's work-life balance issues. So no matter how special you think you are, somebody else has the same problems you have, and there's a solution out there. So if you keep it to yourself, it'll eat away at you. Just, work it out.
Yeah.
Seriously, I've never had a problem over all those years and all those people finding a way to find a balance. I've had problem employees, right? Loads of problem employees, but it's never been around work-life. It's never been around work-life balance. It's always more about, a personal issue or avoiding work, but it is absolutely doable.
Mary?
I guess what I want to ask you guys is, you ladies, is in your unique perspective of women, which I think we all have, what is a situation, or how do you use that to your advantage in situations? Because I do believe we bring a different perspective to conversations. I've always worked with men, and it's a different perspective, and at times it's been very valuable, and I'm just wondering if you guys can speak to that.
I don't know, I guess I've always been, a big believer that every person brings a different perspective, and that having diversity broadly is important, and recognizing when you don't have enough diversity at the table is key. I don't know if I'd say as a woman. I think there's situations where it's incredibly freeing, because I've been in a lot of business situations where I was the only woman, be it here in the US or internationally. Well, all of a sudden you're already different, so the fact that you want to throw a really radical idea on the table, they don't all go, because you're kind of already different in the first place. So sometimes it has that advantage that everybody's already kind of in that mind frame, would expect her to bring up something, and it can open up a conversation. But I don't know if that's necessarily a woman or just happen to be the unique person in the room, right?
And I think there's some familiarity, I'll just take my boss, for example, has a wife and a daughter, sister, and 2 female vice presidents working for him. So he is surrounded by women. I think that's familiar for him, right? And I think, we do bring a unique perspective, but for him, it's a respected perspective. And he expects us, not to just march down the road. He expects us to kind of push back a little bit, and he's got it in every aspect of his life, So I think, to your point, we're a little different, but I think we're also really valued when you bring that voice to the table. If you're not ranting and raving and screaming at people all the time, right? If you're just bringing, sort of a logical, central, calm voice to the table with some real feelings and ideas, but also intelligence, people will listen.
I think it's always good to get a different viewpoint out there, and what I try to do in meetings a lot, and we have a lot of meetings. I'll just put that out there.
Technology.
I'm a little fatigued from all the meetings, but what I always try to do is, if there's a room full of people and we're hashing out an issue, I try to pick the person in the room that's being quiet and ask their opinion and say, what do you think? Do you disagree or do you agree? I try to bring the other conversations and the other viewpoints out. And when you do that a little bit, it kind of frees up the conversation. And you never know, let's be honest here, you're looking at a room full of people, you never know who's going to have the diverse viewpoint. You think you know, maybe it's the one woman in the room, but she might be just thinking exactly the same as everybody else, and it's actually that guy over there that's got the diverse viewpoint. So it's important to make sure that all voices are heard, and then you can kind of get the conversation going a little bit. Women tend to have fear. I've talked to a lot of young women, they're afraid to be wrong, or they're afraid that somebody's going to make fun of them in a meeting. Nobody's going to make fun of you. Your opinion is just as valuable as anybody else's. Throw it out there and see what happens. And you know what? Maybe somebody will laugh at you once, but not all the time, and certainly not in a bad way. So just get over yourself. Your opinion is just as important as anybody else's, and every opinion around that table is important. So try to get them all out there.
Well, and sometimes people won't say, once you bring it up, it frees up the fact that other people, the fear of that being said has come out. It's now that you can have a real conversation about some things.
So this question is for Cheryl, but I'd love the opinion of Sue and Katherine as well. You said you've had a lot of pivoting in your career, and I want to know, does that come from a desire for change or an opportunity that came your way? And then how do you know where you should pivot and if it's the right choice for you? I feel like that's been happening a lot to younger people in careers these days. We kind of tend to want to jump around a lot. And how do you know if it's the right decision?
You never know after, right? Right, because our careers only make sense from the end. Like I can look back and I can piece together this super awesome story about how all these pivots worked and it's all joyous and everything, but I don't know, 10 years from now, like what am I going to do between now and then? I don't know. But I think, so I am a restless soul. Like I tend to do not well after 2 to 3 years. I want to do something else. And I think you should know that about yourself. Like what is it that you like to do? And I think that recognizing that you do have a lot of strengths and always recognizing for me that it was, okay, do my strengths taking me, how many of my strengths will I leverage into this new role and does it have a stretch? And for me, if it doesn't have a stretch, I'm not really that interested. So people come to me all the time with new opportunities, but it's like, well, I've done that. It's like, well, what's the stretch? What's going to be the excitement? Changing industry, changing fields, changing countries, those types of things. And the good news is, I think, if you know what your strengths are and you take a stretch and it's not right, you can come back to those strengths. So never fear the fact you didn't lose everything you've been successful at. So take the stretch to find out. And once you take the stretch, the world opens up. It's like going through a new door. You meet new people. You're often. I've found something amazing that I fought to be in marketing from technology, and all of a sudden, once I was in marketing, I convinced somebody to let me have that first role. all of a sudden I was marketing to everybody else in the company because they never knew I wasn't marketing. So they were very happy to give me another marketing job. And I was like, what? 2 years ago I couldn't get anybody to talk to me about this. So your own skill perception changes in the minds of others. So I don't think there is a knowing in advance. And I tell a lot of young people, fall forward, fail forward. It's like if you're don't fail in place, like that's bad, right? And to be days pass and you age in that role, right? And so you should push the envelope, but look for what skills you want to develop, right? How would you get those? Would that role do that? And most roles, you can make it anything you want, right? I mean, within the constraints of the job, but you can do more or less of things. So it's probably not a very satisfying answer, but you don't know.
I'll give you I'll add on to that a little bit. Don't move from one job to another job before you've accomplished something. Don't move around so much that you have no identity in the organization. By the same token, don't stay so long in any role that you become stale.
Yeah.
Because then you become a part of the not moving the business forward. So you want to stay innovative and you want to be creating value in every role you take on. That's the stretch. So don't stay too long until you get stale, and don't move so fast that you never create any value, you never accomplish anything, and you don't have a name. You're just that person who moves around all the time.
Yeah, I think in my personal experience, I would kind of coin it as, I've been pivoted, not that I have, had pivoting points, right? People have had, those sponsors have had some kind of faith or confidence in me and put me in a position. And what I would say from that is, whether you're being pivoted or you're pivoting, if you're afraid of something, if there's something that, is scaring you or you think it's too challenging or maybe I can't do it, you should do it. Right? And I think that's, it's easy to talk yourself out of it. It's easy to rationalize that, I don't know, that's a little too much for me. I don't know if I want that right now in my life. Maybe I'll go do this other thing. I think, if you really want satisfaction out of your career, out of your life, you have to do things that you're not comfortable with. And you learn and grow tremendously by doing so.
Yeah, if it's not a little bit scary, it's probably not the right thing, right? I mean, that's the best advice.
A little scary too.
I mean, like,
Hi. Okay, so my question is around, oftentimes women are kind of stereotyped. Oftentimes women are stereotyped as being, when they're assertive in their careers or achieve success, with not nice terms about them. But when men do the same, they're leaders and they're strong, you can call on them. So just kind of wanted to know if you had any experience with this and how you managed it, and just kind of your thoughts around that kind of double standard.
I would just say don't listen to it. We are strong, and I think most of us come from a place of inner strength, and people are going to say what they're going to say. Especially if you work in the utility industry, people love to hate us. And, so you got to listen to it to hear it, to maybe understand, maybe there is something I can do better or differently, right? However, you got to put that behind you quick, develop that thick skin, and move forward.
yeah, I would say the same thing, that, you should listen for are there kernels of truth about how you're doing certain things, that, but beyond that, a lot of times it's some combination of jealousy about being successful. It's more about the person who's saying it than it is about you. And so I think it is about, just going forward. Heck, if I worried about everything everybody's always said about me in my career, oh my God, I wouldn't have brain waves to be able to think about my job. So you gotta kind of keep it in perspective. And I think when you hear people talking about other women that way, it's like, well, challenge that. Like, what are you talking about? And ask them, because I think you have to clarify the conversation. And if it's about somebody else, they can't accuse you of being personal in it. So, help each other by clarifying that.
Yeah, I'd make 2 points and I agree 100%. Those are great opportunities. If you ever hear somebody using the B word, I know where you're going, about another woman, that's your big opportunity to get in there and support her and talk about the positive and say, yeah, isn't she fabulous? Did you see what she did? I mean, that's a fabulous moment. You have an opportunity to support one of your colleagues. Second thing is, when it's about you, I had a very wise mentor, sponsor in the past who told me once, the best way to get ahead in a business is to understand the buzz about you and then figure out how to manage it. So you want to know what people are thinking about you. And if they think that, okay, it's their reality, figure out how to change their opinion. Figure out how to single them out and make them see your value rather than something about you that they may not like. So understand the buzz about you and deal with it. It's reality, perception is reality. And use those opportunities when you hear it about somebody else to jump to her defense.
Okay, I think we have time for one final question. Maybe let's get a man.
Hi, my name is Marvin Toussaint. I lead social media for New York Energy Week. My question is about diversity in general, because I think everybody here recognizes the importance of diversity. But diversity can be multiple things. It can be women, it can be African Americans, Latinos, it can be people from the LGBTQ community. So do you think it's about specifically creating a system of kind of incorporating each group individually? Or do you think it's about having an overarching environment that kind of just tries to actively incorporate different points of view and people who aren't represented?
I think, you have to have a couple things. It's a really nice theory, and it's a good thing to put on your, walls, right? Diversity matters, diversity of thought, but you have to actively pursue it, right? And we sit there and we get upset because, it's a quota, and, you're doing this because you're trying to make a number, and no, you're doing it because you're trying to get to an end game of diversity, right? So you have to actively pursue different places, different walks of life, different people to bring in. And, I think the utility industry, I think, has been a little bit slow to do that. We're making huge strides in management levels, in technical levels, but, in the workforce itself, that's a little slower. At Con Edison, we use a group called NYEW, Non-Traditional Employment for Women, and we bring folks in from the ground up. And we teach them for about a week, how to do math, how to respond to a resume, how to write a resume, how to respond to interview questions, and bringing them in from the ground up with the hope and sort of the, almost a promise that, you're going to come into this company, you're going to make it what you make it, right? What you put in is what you're going to get out. But we're actively pursuing these folks and bringing them in so that hopefully someday they'll be in a place where they've learned through the ropes all the way up, know how to do the job, and they're going to be the diversity at the top of the company.
Yeah, I fully agree that it's a broad umbrella of diversity. I mean, introvert and extrovert, I want both. Like, they could be anything else, right? But I can't just have only my extroverts having an opinion and influence on what I'm doing. And so how do you create that, right? And there's the more visible pieces of diversity, and then there's the invisible ones. And but if I'm not respectful of the visible ones, then how would anybody assume that anything else, that I don't want to hear anything else? So I think that you have to I think wisely pursue it as a broad umbrella. But then groups like this and gatherings are really important, because I think there is, until we reach that place where a lot of the diversity is through everything we do every day, to remind people that there are critical masses. This is a virtual critical mass of the women in the energy sector. And you go out into your companies and you may not feel, you might be still the only woman in the room in some of those situations, but you're all here today. And that network really does still exist. It can be supportive, and that's true across a lot of other perspectives as well.
Yeah, I think it's a broad umbrella. I think, diversity is about diversity of opinion and all the visible things, as Cheryl said. But I think it's also about, for me, it's about employee engagement. If you don't really care about all the different kinds of people in your company, a lot of them aren't going to feel like working for the company. They're just there to collect a paycheck, and you're never going to create a real valuable, efficient organization unless everybody really truly feels connected. And without allowing those different viewpoints to be heard and celebrated, you're not going to get the best out of your people. So just from a purely business, selfish perspective, you want every one of those employees fully engaged every day, caring about the business, caring about the customers, and you can't do that if you don't listen to them. So you have to give them the power of of their opinion mattering, no matter what they look like, where they came from, you gotta bring them in. And I think that's the value of diversity for me, is it's the whole works better when everybody cares about it.
So I think that's about all the time we have for questions. Our panelists will be sticking around if anyone wants to speak to them. Before we break into networking, we're going to hear from another man for some diversity. But I also wanted to single out a few special women in the room who are instrumental in not only putting today together, but all of New York Energy Week. Our New York Energy Week team from EnerKnol, who is May Poon. May, do you want to wave? And then this is Eric Davis, our research manager, and one of the fabulous men that we have on our team.
Good morning, everyone. I want to first thank Emily, Kathy, Cheryl, and Sue for the great discussion. Also thank our founding partner, again, NYEW, and also Con Edison, National Grid, and Brightling Energy for their support. I was going to recognize everybody individually, but Emily took that. But we'll just get another round of applause because this is not the platform. This whole discussion, please stick around for a networking session and meet the panelists, ask more questions, and continue to network with the leaders in this room. So thank you again.